Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be installing the SRC bumper from SmittyBilt that I just got in the mail about 2 days ago. As you can see, the bumper's already put on the JL, but what I'm going to do is walk you through the step-by-steps that I took in order to get this bumper installed. We're also going to talk about how to wire up lights and how to use the auxiliary switches properly. I'm going to kind of fumble through that, do my best to give you the best images and video that I can to show you how to use those auxiliary switches. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel to see more videos like these, and we'll see you in a minute.
You know I'm a heathen, still got some bones to break. My drink got me leaning, you about to make a mistake. I'm so far gone, bad blood turned on. I burn to anyone in my way. I'm about to bury my hatchet, so pick up the plush in your casket. These chemicals give me bad reactions. Burn it down to the ashes.
So yesterday I spent most of my day trying to film the video on removing the rear bumper and then putting this new bumper on. A, I'm working with a new camera, and B, it was extremely blazing hot. So today what I'm going to do is just kind of go over the steps that I took. Even though the bumper's already on, I have to loosen some items to get everything to fit back properly. There's 4 bolts up underneath the bumper that you have to tighten down, and right now I'm a little off center from those, so I need to adjust it. And I'm going to have to undo some of the bolts. So as I'm doing that, I'm going to take you through the bolts, the socket sizes, and everything that you're going to need in order to put the bumper on and then take the bumper off if you ever want to take it off. So here we go. So up underneath there's these 4 bolts that are 18mm bolts that you take off. They connect the factory bumper to the frame, and this is what's going to connect the SRC bumper to your frame as well. Now, there's typically factory bolts in here, but SmittyBilt sends you longer bolts with a washer and a lock washer that you just tighten down with an 18mm socket, and that's what holds this bumper in place. Now on both sides there are 2 bolts that you take off to actually remove the factory bumper. Those bolt holes you're not going to need anymore, so if you want, put those into your kit that you take with you off-road so you have a couple extra bolts in case anything were to break. But you don't need those anymore because you only need these ones. Now up under where the muffler is, there's a nut plate that goes into these 2 holes that allows you to clamp the bolt down onto the frame. So you have to slide this nut plate in over this way, and it sits right down on top of it, and then you just screw your 2 bolts right into there. Okay, I've got the bumper pretty much installed. I was able to get it leveled. Now I'm just going to go around with the 22mm socket, tighten everything up, and we should be good to go. Now, SmittyBilt recommends you tighten the bolts that are connected directly to the frame down to 80 foot-pounds. So I'm going to do that right now. Now that the bumper is completely on, I'm going to start diving into the electrical. So what I plan on doing is putting the 2 lights that come along with this kit, and I want to wire them to either my number 3 or my number 4 auxiliary switch inside the Jeep. So I got to get the wires from the rear all the way up front, through the firewall, over to the battery. Then I'm going to connect them to that number 3 or 4 auxiliary switch so I can turn them on and off when I'm on the trail. They are a bright white LED light, but I think it'll be cool for us to have, especially when we're getting into the back of the Jeep, when we're cooking or when we're grabbing stuff and it's dark out, we'll be able to have those lights shining down and kind of illuminate this back area. I wasn't going to put them in, but my wife wants them in. So I'm going to figure out how to get those in and get those wired up, and I'm going to try to show you guys how to do that too. Now here are the lights that I'm talking about. They come with adapters, and it comes with a whole wiring harness. I'm not exactly sure, I haven't looked much at the directions, but these lights slide into the bumper, and they'll be able to illuminate the ground, or you can turn them on when you're driving so people can follow you and they know where you're at if it's dark on the trail. So I'm gonna work on trying to figure out this wiring harness and get this ran up to the front of the Jeep. Okay, so after messing around with SmittyBilt's wiring harness, I've been able to figure out a way to make all of this work together. Now, on the SmittyBilt harness, it comes with a rocker switch that's attached to these two cables, or these three, and then you have your positive and your negative. So what I've done is I've disassembled the SmittyBilt rocker switch and taken the red, the blue, and the black. The blue and the red are both positives. I've connected them to my number 4 auxiliary switch, and then I've ran my positive and my negative to the battery terminal, and I turned the Jeep on, pressed the button, it lit up the back lights. So now what I got to do is figure out how to get these ran from here. I'm going to wire everything up and then try to start working my way back just to make sure that I have enough space in case I have to make a custom wiring harness, which I really have no intention of doing. So I'm going to figure this out, and then I'll check back in with you guys once I have a chance to look at it and see if I can get it working. Alright, so what I had to do is basically disassemble the wiring harness that SmittyBilt sent because it had that extra rocker switch. I don't need it. I'm using the auxiliary switch. So I got everything heat shrunk together, all the positives, all the negatives. I needed to extend this a few feet to make sure it reaches the back because the back side of the wiring harness has plug-ins, specific plug-ins for the lights. So I was having a little bit of trouble getting it back there, so I extended these out about 3 feet. It's going to be more than I need, but it's going to give me the space to work, so I don't really have to worry about anything. So I'm going to wire these up and make sure everything works before I get to running everything. As long as it works, then I'll come back, undo everything, and rewire it again. So I'm not going to go through all the wiring with you. I'm going to show you where I mounted it, but everyone kind of wires stuff in their vehicles their own way. And you know, this is kind of what I did, and everybody's going to have a little bit of a different idea. But if you have any questions about wiring or what I did, where I ran it, just leave those in the comments and I'll get right to them as soon as I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape all of this, basically this section up, just so it's kind of uniform, it stays out of the elements, because I am going to be running it down through the motor around this fuse box and then down and then along the frame all the way back out. I could have done it on that side, but there's more heat that goes on over there with the exhaust, so I decided to run it on this side. But as you can see, I kind of got a rat's nest going, and just to keep everything clean, I'm going to tape all this up to here, so all of this is protected. That way when I put that down there, it'll all be one big unit. Now, there is a fuse in here that if anything, there's too much power or I get a surge in power, it will blow that fuse before it blows the lights, so that's definitely going to help. And that's all I got. So I'm going to get this installed, get it ran down in there, and then I'll show you guys what I did. Alright, so after 2 days of working on installing this bumper, I finally got her done. I just jumped out of the camera and came back. But it's rock solid. This SRC bumper from SmittyBilt is freaking awesome. It wasn't super hard to put on. Taking the old bumper off, the plastic one, was actually more difficult because the YouTube videos that I got my information from didn't do a great job of explaining what I needed to do. So after I figured out how to get that old bumper off, and you saw that in the previously in the video, I was able to mount this thing up extremely easy. It all mounts right to the frame. There's only, I think, 6 or 8 bolts that you have to take off and put back on to mount the bumper. Now, wiring the lights, it's all done. It's pretty clean. I am going to go back and kind of mess with a few things. I don't necessarily love where I have it ran. It's kind of ran underneath the Jeep and then along the frame a little bit, and it's exposed to the elements, and I don't love that idea, but for right now it's going to be good. We are gearing up to go on another trip here in about 2 or 3 weeks, where we're going to be 2 or 3 weeks off the grid. So before I go then, I'm going to adjust some things, but I'm glad that I was able to figure out the JL auxiliary switches and pretty much wire this up by myself, really for the first time. If you are working with the auxiliary switches, it's actually super simple. Jeep did a really good job of putting those in a simple place for you to get, and then even easier for you to be able to just tie into them and connect to that switch. So like I said before, I'm on auxiliary 4 for these lights. I am going to move my rigid lights that I have, those little cowl lights on the hood. I'm going to move those from auxiliary 1 to auxiliary 3 because auxiliary 1 and 2 are built for a higher load, so more like a winch or maybe a refrigerator. I'm not really sure. I'm gonna have to do some research on that. If you guys know what that number 1 and number 2 are in terms of how much power they can handle versus number 3 and 4, I would love to know, just so I know that I'm wiring everything to the right spot. But SmittyBilt SRC is freaking beastie. I love the way it looks. I think it's gonna perform well. I broke my last bumper, but it was just a plastic bumper. Standing on it was super sketchy because it would bend. So I know that this is gonna perform a lot better, and I'm extremely happy to have it on the Jeep. So thank you guys for watching the video. And if you liked the video, like the video. If you didn't like the video, don't do anything at all. I don't want you to touch anything. You can just click to the next video, and that's fine too. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you can see some more videos. Anything that I can do to help, please leave it in the comments. I'll put some links to the rigid lights and some of the other things that we have on the Jeep underneath in the description area. If you want to buy those, click them and buy them. It helps the channel. We appreciate it. So we'll talk to you guys soon. I have a couple more mods coming up. I do have a refrigerator coming. I have a goose gear platform system coming. I'm thinking about putting in a new compressor before we go. So there's a lot of stuff coming, and I will be happy to share it with you guys. So have a good one.